Oh God, sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was a complete professional performance. Obviously, for me personally, I think, always playing your old team, you get a lot of motivation from that. But it's like any other game. There's been a lot of change these last couple of weeks, and the most important thing is that we're making progress and moving forward. I think Benny is a great coach, and he brings a lot of great ideas, and it's all about transitioning and learning his philosophies, and I think these last two games have really shown that. Obviously, it's emotional because I spent 3 years there, some of the happiest moments of my career. But at the end of the day, we have to do our job. It's like any person that goes to work. It's important that I'm representing the Roots, and I've been so happy here these last couple of weeks. I just want to soak everything up, keep learning, keep applying my craft, and we have a lot of good pieces. We're a very talented team, and now we just need to put it all together and be consistent. I think that's the biggest thing. Not having lulls and lack of performance, but we need to keep going. And I think this middle third of the season is especially important, and I think we're going to put our best foot forward. And now we need to make playoffs and come out on top. I pride myself on the attacking side of the game. Since I was younger, I had a lot of compliments on my attacking side. But as a defender, you have to defend first. That's the main priority. You can't go forward unless you have the ball and you're in certain areas. But I think these last couple of days, these last weeks, I've been increasing my knowledge of the game with Benny and the coaching staff. I think there's been a lot of things that I've been picking up on that haven't been natural before, and we're all learning. It's a very results-based business, but at the end of the day, we wake up and do what we love every day, and that's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and we need to win. We need to make results for the fans, and most importantly, we need to be proud of our performances, which is something that I think these last 10 days, these last 2 weeks, it's an amazing start. But we can't get too high on 2 wins, and when we lose, we can't get too low. It'll all even out in the end because that's sports. But we're on the right track, and we have to be consistent. I think just pride. We all need to take pride in defending and keeping the ball out of the net. I think these last couple of years, I've been on the West Coast, and I know that Oakland scores a lot, but they also concede a lot. The most important thing is to score goals and keep the ball out of the net. It's a game of 2 boxes. That's the most important thing. So, as long as it's 0-0, we have a chance to win. So, I think the coaching staff, we've been working hard, a little different in training these last couple of weeks, really implementing the philosophies and the style of play. But at the end of the day, with this formation, it's very flexible. Being able to drop back into a back 5 and protect the goal. We have strong big guys like Hack, very experienced. So it helps us a lot. I think as a family moving forward, that's what we're trying to do. It's a different feel here now. It's not. We're not getting too high on these results, because at the end of the day, it's a long season, and we want to get to where we want to be, but there's a lot of steps, a lot of process that it takes to get there. So we're on the right track. I just saw the guys in there. We're happy, but we're back to work on Monday because we have a tough couple of games in the league. Detroit and Phoenix, who's a West Coast opposition. So those West Coast games are so important for us to move up the table. Honestly, I think when a new coach comes in, it's kind of like a fresh start for everyone.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing that I can take away. And from my experience, I've had a lot of chop and change these last year. Sometimes it's not easy. A new coach coming in, it can go up, it can go down. But I think all the players are buying into the philosophy that Benny has. From day one, he's been very clear, very concise with his demands and the work rate of each individual. We're doing a lot more video. We're doing a lot more, scrutiny in certain areas to really perform on the field better. And each and every person knows the exact role that we need to do. So when we step on the field, there's no indecisive moments. There's no lack of decision. It's just very clear. So that's the main thing. And I think when people are scared to either lose their position in the team because a new coach comes in, he sees it's a game of opinions. At the end of the day, I could. 99 people could like me and 1 person could not. That's football and that's sports. But I think at the end of the day, we're learning how to have each other's back, learning how to push each other in training. There's competitions for spots. That's the most important thing. If you're looking over your shoulder, it's not always the right thing. You have to focus on you. but also as the collective. There's 18 more games left, and we have goals. We want to make the playoffs. It's great to win in the Jägermeister, but at the end of the day, Benny and the coaches that we have, we want to make the playoffs. We're not far off. 6 points, so it's in our hands. Yeah, it's honestly world class. Because there's a reason why so many national teams want to use the facility, because it has everything. First of all, California is an amazing place, and it's somewhere where I feel very comfortable. But the facility, it's top class. I think when you go in, you don't have to worry about anything else but football. That's as players, that's the most important thing. Because in the USL, every club has different positives and different negatives. And I think Oakland, this setup that we have is just amazing. Not a lot of teams get to train on grass every day. For all the guys like me and guys that play a lot of minutes, it's very crucial on your body to be able to train on grass every day, because I come from a past where I've been on artificial turf, and it's very painful. After the games you feel it a lot more. So it's a really amazing place to be. I think being away from it and coming back to have a chance to be in this setup, it's made me grateful, because I haven't had it in my career before. So I'm just really proud and happy to be a part of it. His standards, because he played at a really high level. He expects, we all see the game differently, but the way that he relays his message is very, as a player, it's very clear. There's no wondering. It's very concise. I think the way he talks to his players, the attention to detail. We do individual meetings with the positions. What the wants are, what the tendencies are, and I think these last couple of weeks have just been a breath of fresh air. I think I talk to the guys. Everyone's close to certain guys, but we're really gelling well. We're more of a tight knit group. I was only here for a couple of days, but I've been in a lot of locker rooms and a lot of teams, and we have a bit of everything. A lot of some internationals, some Latinos, but we all have to find the balance to make it work. And I think Penny's really got the best of us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.